Welcome to Cheater Confessions. Let's get started with today's story. It wasn't just that Cynthia and I hadn't been intimate for a long time. It was the way it had stopped feeling like something either of us even noticed was missing. We'd been married 7 years by then. The honeymoon phase had faded, sure, but it wasn't long enough to excuse what we'd become. By now, we should have known better. We moved around the house like roommates, cold, polite. Her side of the bed might as well have been a different zip code. No kisses goodbye, no random touches, no warmth at all. I told myself it was work, stress, hormones. Whatever excuse made it easier to stay. Then came Edward's birthday party. It was a backyard thing. String lights overhead, cheap beer and coolers, people laughing around a big stone fire pit. Cynthia was in a good mood for once. She joked. She smiled at strangers. She touched my arm when we arrived, pretending for the crowd. For a second, I almost let myself believe the switch was real. Edward raised his beer, grinning. All right, serious question. Who's got it better, newlyweds or us old married folks? People laughed, tossing out answers. Then Cynthia stepped up, a wine glass dangling from her fingers. She flashed a bright smile, leaned toward the group and said, "For Donald, intimacy is a gift I give him when he's a good boy, and only on my schedule." The laughter hit like a slap. Loud, ugly. Someone elbowed me playfully. A few of the women cackled harder. I forced a smile and drank from my cup like it didn't bother me. But it did. It wasn't just the joke. It was how comfortable she was making it. How proud she looked, standing there with the firelight dancing in her eyes, knowing she'd just cut me down in front of everyone. And loving it. The rest of the night blurred by. Cynthia laughed too loud. I nodded along, drank too much, pretended like it didn't sting. When we got home, she kicked off her shoes, poured herself another glass of wine, and plopped onto the couch, scrolling her phone like she hadn't just gutted me in public. I stood in the hallway for a long minute, watching her, realizing how invisible I'd become in my own marriage. This wasn't a rough patch. This was over. The only difference was that now I was ready to stop pretending otherwise. After that night, I didn't bother trying anymore. No more asking if she wanted coffee or sending her stupid memes. No more reaching out across the cold space between us. Cynthia didn't seem to notice. If anything, she looked relieved, like my silence made things easier for her. In the mornings, I started getting up early, earlier than I needed to. I'd drive down to Benny's diner, the one she always called gross, grab a coffee, and sit in the parking lot with the windows down, just breathing. It didn't fix everything, but it reminded me I was still alive. At home, we moved around each other like strangers. Cynthia scrolled endlessly through her phone. I stayed busy fixing small things around the house or flipping through a book I wasn't really reading. One night, she glanced up at me over the rim of her wine glass. "You're awfully quiet lately," she said, like it was mildly annoying. I shrugged. "Guess I just don't have much to say." She studied me for a second, almost curious, like she was trying to figure out if I was mad or broken. Then she smiled, a tight, dismissive little thing, and went back to her phone. The old me would have wanted to fix it, would have tried to talk, apologized for things that weren't even my fault. Not anymore. At the gym, I started lifting heavier, running harder. It wasn't for her. It wasn't for anyone. It was for me. I could feel pieces of myself coming back, pieces I hadn't realized I'd given away. Cynthia didn't ask where I was going when I stayed out later. She didn't text to check in, didn't care. And that told me everything I needed to know. It didn't take long for Cynthia to notice something was different. One night I came home from the gym later than usual. She was sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone, a glass of wine half empty beside her. "You're out late," she said, voice casual but her eyes sharp. I shrugged, kicking off my shoes. "Gym ran long." She watched me like she didn't quite believe it. "New routine, huh?" "New priorities," I said, heading into the kitchen. I could feel her staring at my back, trying to read between the lines. Later that week, she tried being sweet, made my favorite lasagna, wore that soft old sweater she knew I liked, brushed against me when she passed by in the hallway. The old Donald might have melted. The new Donald just smiled politely and kept moving. One night she actually sat next to me on the couch instead of curling up on the far end. "You've been different lately," she said, tucking her legs under her. "Yeah," I said, not looking away from the TV. "Feels good." She laughed lightly, trying to keep it playful. "You're not having a midlife crisis, are you?" "Nope, just realizing what matters." For the first time, I saw a flicker of real fear cross her face. She started fishing, asking where I went after work, who I was texting, why I was dressed nice for the gym. The irony almost made me laugh. For years, she acted like I barely existed. Now that she couldn't predict me, she was panicking. I didn't explain myself. I didn't argue. I didn't give her anything. And that silence drove her crazy. The truth landed in my lap when I least expected it. I ran into Evan, Edward's brother, at the gas station one Sunday afternoon. We greeted each other and talked for a minute, the usual small talk. Work, the weather, nothing important. Then, as he grabbed a soda, Evan hesitated. "By the way," he said, almost like an afterthought, "I saw Cynthia the other day. Downtown." I glanced over at him, keeping my face neutral. "Yeah?" "She was with some guy I didn't recognize. They looked close." I kept my voice steady. "When was that?" "Thursday afternoon, I think, around 3. I nodded once. "Good seeing you." He caught the shift in my tone and gave a quick, awkward goodbye before heading out. I stood there for a second, letting the cold air from the cooler hit me. Thursday. Cynthia had told me she was out running errands that day. Back home, I waited until she was in the shower. Then I did what I never thought I'd do. I checked her phone. It wasn't hard. She never changed her passcode. Buried inside a folder labeled Budget Apps was the real secret. A second messaging app. Inside, the messages were all there. Pictures, flirty texts, plans for weekends, jokes about me. "He's so boring. He's like living wallpaper. Don't worry, he'll never find out. He's too passive." I scrolled through the images. Him, Chase, grinning, shirtless, the guy who thought he was clever enough to replace me. Before I closed the app, I forwarded the worst messages and photos to my private email. Quiet, careful. Then I deleted the forwarding history and locked the phone. I didn't feel rage. I felt something colder. Final. I sat out on the back deck while she blow-dried her hair, thinking it through. There was no speech that would fix this. No confrontation that would make it satisfying. The cleanest revenge wouldn't be a fight. It would be a quiet, perfect exit. And it would leave her standing in the ashes she made. The next morning, I started putting the real plan into motion. While Cynthia got ready for her day, I was already 2 steps ahead. I opened a private account at a different bank, transferred my paycheck routing, froze the joint savings. I wasn't being reckless, I was being careful. Clean cuts, no mess. At lunch, I met Lisa, a lawyer I had quietly researched a few weeks earlier. Smart. No nonsense. I passed her my phone. She read the messages slowly, her face never changing, just a small nod when she finished. Lisa told me I had more than enough, proof of infidelity, hidden finances, and enough leverage to keep it sharp and quiet. No drama unless Cynthia started it. I leaned back in the chair and agreed. By the end of the week, I'd rerouted everything important into my name. Credit cards canceled. Streaming services I paid for without her knowing. Gone. That Friday, Cynthia tried to order sushi after work. The card declined. She called from the restaurant, annoyed. "Donald, the bank says our account's frozen. What's going on?" I smiled to myself, leaning against the kitchen counter. Must be a glitch. I'll look into it. That night, she wore the red dress I used to love and sat close to me on the couch, laughing too hard at a movie she wasn't even watching. Fishing for something. Testing the waters. I stayed polite, cool, detached. Let her squirm. On Saturday morning, she asked if I wanted to go to brunch with her friends. "Nah," I said, tying my sneakers. "Got plans." She tried to hide her confusion, but it slipped into her voice. "Since when?" I smiled. "Since now." By Tuesday night, I had everything ready. The house was in my name. The finances were locked down. The divorce papers sat in a neat envelope on my desk. All I had to do was pick the right moment to deliver them. And I already knew exactly when that would be. I didn't have to wait long. Cynthia had a self-care weekend planned, some yoga retreat 2 hours out of town. I already knew the truth. She wasn't going to be alone, and it sure wasn't for yoga. On Saturday morning, she was rushing around the house, packing leggings and makeup into a small overnight bag. "You'll be okay without me for a couple days?" she asked sweetly. I smiled. "I'll survive." She kissed my cheek, a quick, distracted thing, and walked out the door without a second glance. As soon as her car disappeared down the road, I moved. Locks? Changed. Bank accounts? Locked down. By the time she hit the highway, the life she thought she controlled was already gone. I didn't follow her, didn't blow up her phone. I wasn't interested in a confrontation in some cabin in the woods. I just waited. Around noon, I sent her one text. "When you get back, don't bother coming home. Papers will be delivered Monday." That was it. No punctuation, no threats, just the end. Her first reply came 10 minutes later. "What are you talking about?" Then more. "We need to talk. You're blowing this out of proportion. Donald, stop being dramatic. You're not like this." I didn't answer any of them. That night, security footage showed her trying her keys in the door. When they didn't work, she pounded on the door, crying, yelling my name. I didn't open it. I just sat on the couch, beer in hand, watching the door through the side window. She eventually slid down against the frame, sobbing into her hands. By morning, she was gone, left nothing but a broken sandal and a smear of mascara on the porch. On Monday morning, Cynthia got served. At her office. Right in front of the people she used to love impressing. I wasn't trying to humiliate her. Not directly. I just wasn't interested in protecting her image anymore. That was a husband's job. And I had resigned. The texts kept coming for days after. "I made a mistake, please. We can fix this. Don't throw away what we built. You're better than this." Funny how people only discover your worth once they realize they can't use you anymore. I didn't respond. I deleted every message without reading past the first line. I was busy. Back at work, I picked up new projects. I hit the gym harder, stayed longer, started eating better, sleeping better, living. One evening after a late workout, Kelsey, someone I knew from the gym, stopped me outside as I was leaving. "You hear about Cynthia?" she asked. I raised an eyebrow. "No, don't care to either." She laughed. "Well, she moved into a tiny apartment over by 9th Street. Chase dumped her. Guess he wasn't into long-term after all." I just nodded, letting the news settle like dust on an empty road. No satisfaction, no gloating. Just confirmation that the life she gambled everything on had folded fast. One rainy Thursday afternoon, I saw her again. I was grabbing coffee at Starbucks when she walked in, hair damp, sweater too big for her frame. She spotted me and froze. For a second, it looked like she might cry, or beg. Instead, she gave a small, sad smile. "You look good, Donald." I nodded politely. "I feel good." Nothing cruel, nothing extra. I picked up my coffee and walked past her like she was just another stranger waiting in line. And honestly, that's all she was now. A few days after that last awkward run-in at Starbucks, Cynthia sent one last text. "I'm sorry for everything. I really am." I stared at it for a second, then deleted it without replying. Forgiveness wasn't what I needed. Closure wasn't a conversation. Closure was a choice. And I had already made mine. The real betrayal wasn't the cheating. It was the years of contempt, the slow, quiet erasure of who I was, until I was just furniture in my own life. But that was done now. On Saturday morning, I sat on the back porch, a cup of coffee in my hand, the cool breeze rolling in from the fields behind the house. The same house Cynthia used to decorate for parties, for show, for appearances. Now it was just mine. Simple, quiet, real. I thought back to that night at the party, standing around the fire pit while everyone laughed at my expense. Cynthia's voice, sweet and mocking, still rang in my head. "Intimacy is my gift if he's a good boy. Only on my schedule." I smiled at the memory. Not bitter, just clear. She thought that power was hers to keep. She never realized I was the one who allowed it, until I took it back. For the first time in years, the silence around me wasn't heavy. It wasn't cold. It was mine. Not something forced on me. Not something I endured to keep the peace. Mine. I leaned back in my chair, stretched out my legs, and let the morning sink into my bones. No noise, no chaos, no masks. Just the quiet life I built for myself. And the one promise I'd keep from now on. I'd never hand my silence over to someone who didn't know how precious it was. Not ever again. Thank you for watching.